When the Switch first came out, I thought to myself, okay, big open world games, those are for playing at home. And portable games are more for when you're out and about and you just want something quick that you can pick up and play and put back down easily. And then Breath of the Wild came out and it completely changed my mind that the Switch is fantastic for open world huge games because you constantly have this with you and you can open it up, accomplish something quickly, and then easily hit that power button to put it into sleep mode and pick up where you left off in 20 minutes when you get a chance. I played way more Breath of the Wild than I probably would have if I couldn't play this wherever I felt like. And that's not going to, I mean, I'm not saying this because I think that this rumor is true, but I will say that the game would, this style of game works very well on this platform. So I can understand why people would ask for Witcher 3 on the Nintendo Switch. I can understand that. However, there's a couple of roadblocks, and they're pretty big roadblocks to overcome before we see a game like this. Well, not a game like this, but before we see Witcher 3 on the Switch. The first is performance. You look at The Witcher 3, this game is a graphics powerhouse. It is a gorgeous game. I have played a little bit of it. I have it on PC, and man, that game is gorgeous. On the PS4 and Xbox One, the game runs pretty well. It doesn't run amazing, but it runs pretty well. And the same can probably be said for the Xbox One X and PS4 Pro. The game probably runs pretty well. I don't think that I think I remember reading that it doesn't get a solid 60 frames per second. Excuse me. But it comes pretty close, or at least it has a locked in 30. Witcher 3 is a very pretty game, and running that on the Nintendo Switch would be a tall order. Now, you could say the same thing about Doom. Doom, which came out in 2016 on the PS4 and Xbox One and PC. The game was gorgeous, and somehow they managed to use dynamic resolution scaling in order to make this game run on the Switch, and it runs pretty well, locked in at 30 frames per second instead of 60 frames per second. So, there's definitely some trade-offs, but I think that that's the number one obstacle that has to be overcome for Witcher 3 to come to the Switch, and that would be just the fact that it wouldn't run very well. And CD Projekt Red right now, they have all kinds of, what's the word I'm looking for? They're looked upon fondly by most gamers as a company that does the right thing. So I don't see them taking all of that goodwill from gamers and just slapping a crappy port on the Switch just to make a buck. I think that they care more about their name than some other companies would. So I don't think that they would do it unless it could be done well. And that means a good frame rate and very playable. What does that mean? It means the game is not going to look very good. It's going to be very low resolution, and it's a tough, you have to choose between frame rate and resolution, and having it just balance those two things is so difficult when a game is made for a platform that is far beyond the capabilities of the Switch, I can understand why that would be hesitant to do that. Another reason why it's unlikely that this rumor is true is just the sheer size of the game. I think I read that that Witcher 3 and the DLC comes in at 60 gigs. 60. I mean, that's bigger. Like, if I just bought a Switch, I could not download that and install it on my system, because this just comes with 32 gigs of storage. So obviously I would have to have an SD card. Now, that doesn't bother me. I have an SD card. I think 32 gigabytes on the Switch is plenty, because they also gave us the option to add SD cards as we wanted. But I've seen a lot of gaming companies who bring their games to the Switch. They kind of rip us off in the cartridge. So they buy the cheaper cartridge which can't hold as much, and then they make us download extra stuff. Like that would tick me off. I think that would tick off a lot of people, and that's something that I don't think CD Projekt Red would like to do. I mentioned Doom. That's one of the ways that Doom dealt with the smaller cartridges, is they took all of the multiplayer and took it off of the cart and made it so that you had to download that separately. I don't like that. They also, I think it was Doom, or maybe it was something else. They also had like crappier sound files, so they compressed the sound files more, so they just didn't sound as nice when you were playing on the Switch. And that's something that nobody really had thought of as one of the issues that you would run into when playing on the Switch, is that the game wouldn't sound as nice, because most people just think, oh, well, sound is sound. It's not like you have to have crazy sound cards anymore. It's not like I remember back in the days of buying sound cards for computers. That wasn't really an issue that most people would think of, but the sound files were compressed, so the games just didn't sound as good on the Switch, because the developers are trying to fit these huge files into very small spaces, and that causes issues. So there's certainly some big issues to overcome if we want to see Witcher 3 on the Nintendo Switch. And that's why I take this rumor that comes from a French wholesaling website, which lists The Witcher 3 as coming to the Switch. I take that with a huge grain of salt. The one thing about this is that this wholesale website doesn't seem to be just making up random stuff. Like, if you look at their whole site, you see lots of other stuff that you would expect to find, like other games. But these are the only ones that had listed The Witcher 3 as coming to the Switch. So I'm curious as to what you guys think about this game coming to the Nintendo Switch. Is it something that you'd be interested in? I know that there's a lot of people out there, and this is something that CD Projekt Red is probably looking at, and they're saying there's a lot of people out there who have just bought a Nintendo Switch and who've never played our game because they don't have a PS4, they don't have an Xbox One, they don't have a PC, they just have a Switch, and we want them to be able to play our game. I don't know if it's a good idea. I don't know if it's a bad idea, but unless they can do it really, really well, then I think that they should back off and not do it at all. And, I don't know who would be working on the port, but I would hope it would be the same people that did Doom and Rocket League, because they did a good job porting to the Switch. And I can't remember the name of that company, but they did a great job porting those games to the Switch for id Software and Psyonix, whoever that third-party studio was. So anyway, Panic Button. Thank you, Joe Afterwork. That's right, Panic Button they ported those games and they did such a great job. I would like to see them get their hands on The Witcher 3 to bring that to the Switch. And I have The Witcher 3 and I've still not played it. And there's many people who yell at me every time that I talk to them about video games. They're like, did you play The Witcher yet? And I say, no, not yet. And then they get mad and they yell at me. So we'll have to see what happens down the road. But I'm very skeptical with this rumor.